Welcome and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Alejandra and I'm the Legal Services Director at Immigrants Rising. We are very excited to bring this film, The Undocumented Lawyer, to our community, both because of our work with undocumented young folks who are interested in pursuing a legal career, but also because of the several themes of the film that resonate with our work, such as centering those who are most impacted, entrepreneurship, advocacy, and the importance of community. So we're also thrilled about the opportunity to be in conversation with Lizbeth Mateo and other members of our Immigrants Rising community who are on their own path to becoming attorneys. Before I turn it over to our moderator, just wanted to let you know that we'll have some space for questions a little bit later on in the chat. And what you all could do is go ahead and enter those questions during the chat, in the chat feature. So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Yongbin Cheng. So Yongbin is a second-year JD candidate at the University of California, Berkeley School of Law. He came to the US from South Korea at the age of 3 and attended UC Berkeley as an economics major. In law school, Yongbin serves as a student advocate and leader for the East Bay Dreamers Project, providing DACA renewal services to Bay Area residents. And at Berkeley Law, Yongbin has been involved in both immigrant advocacy and Asian Pacific Islander organizations. So believing the legal profession can be an avenue for change, Yongbin is hoping to pursue a clerkship and a future in litigation. And one thing I'll sneak in is also that he's an alumni of Immigrants Rising's Immigration Law Fellowship Program. So take it away, Yongbin, it's all you.
Thanks so much, Ale, for your generous introduction. I'm excited to moderate today as this community is near and dear to my heart. We have 3 amazing panelists who will share a bit about their story and their path and their motivations in their career path. So the first panelist I'm introducing is the protagonist of the film, Lizbeth Mateo. Lizbeth is a fearless activist and a brilliant attorney. She is placed in a unique position, being both undocumented, yet sworn in as a lawyer in California. In doing so, she has pledged to uphold the constitution of a country that doesn't recognize her as a citizen. She came to the US from Mexico at the age of 14, drawing on her experiences and struggles to push back against the immigration apparatus. Now, Lizbeth fights for asylum seekers and immigration reform as she advocates for her community. The award-winning documentary, The Undocumented Lawyer, which was picked up by HBO, follows her journey as she navigates California courts and fights for undocumented individuals. The next panelist is Alejandro. Alejandro Garcia, originally from Sonora, Mexico, and raised in San Francisco's Mission District, Alejandro is rooted in his community and is invested in improving the social, economic, and political conditions of working-class immigrants. He currently works as the legal assistant of the Workers' Rights Program at La Raza Centro Legal, where he advocates for immigrant low-wage workers by preparing claims on their behalf before labor enforcement agencies. Alejandro graduated from San Francisco State University. He plans to attend law school and is interested in the intersection of environmental, immigration, and employment law. In his free time, Alejandro loves riding his bike and blasting reggaeton music through a speaker. Katiuska Pimentel. Katiuska was born in Peru and immigrated to the US at the age of 15. She graduated with honors from the University of California, Santa Cruz, with a BA in politics and legal studies. She has dedicated her professional career to public service. In 2016, Katiuska moved to DC to work for Senator Feinstein. She received the UC Presidential Public Service Award and became a Matsui Congressional Fellow. She worked as an investigator at the Santa Cruz Public Defender Office and as a community organizer for the rights of marginalized communities. In 2018, Katiuska was selected as a winner for Google's Moving Forward Challenge for her work advocating for immigrant rights. Last year, Katiuska's niece, Kayla, unfortunately passed away at the Gilroy shooting, which fueled her passion to earn a JD to support victims. She attended the 2019 Democratic Convention to advocate for comprehensive gun control legislation. In 2020, California Senator Jim Beal selected Katiuska to receive the District 15 Woman of the Year award. Before law school, Katiuska worked as a paralegal at the immigration law firm of Richard Hobbs. She's a 1L Chancellor Scholar at USF Law. Again, it's my honor to introduce all 3 amazing panelists. I'm super excited to have this conversation. And so the first few questions will be for Lizbeth and just talking about the film. And then the questions will then broaden out to all three panelists, and we'll have a bit of time, hopefully, if depending on how the time goes, for some community questions as well at the end. So Lizbeth, the first question is for you. Given the importance of storytelling in not just the documentary, but in our community, could you tell us a bit more about your story and what motivated you to make this documentary? And then a question I'm going to tag to that, which you can decide to answer separately or as a part of it, is how is storytelling through a documentary different than through other mediums?
Well, first of all, thank you everyone for being part of this panel, for taking the time of your day. I know that you probably had a busy day, so I really appreciate you all being here. I see that there's a lot of participants. So I was born and raised in Oaxaca, Mexico, to two amazing parents who raised me to essentially believe that I could do anything in life. But, you know, we were a low-income family growing up in a small town. And I always, as a kid, I always dreamed of becoming an attorney. And I always told my parents I want to become an attorney or a doctor. And my parents never said, no, you can't do that. Or, you know, let's be realistic. We don't have the money to send you to college. But they were very, very supportive. And I think that part of the reason why we ended up moving to this country was because my parents wanted to give me and my siblings a better life, the opportunity to actually go to college if that's what we wanted to do. I didn't know any attorneys when I was growing up. I had no idea what attorneys actually did. I had this sort of romanticized idea of what an attorney did. You know, you fight for the most vulnerable in your community. You always fight for justice. And I was that kind of kid who would always get into fights with people if I didn't like something. So I always, you know, spoke out. I was always very vocal about the things that I believed in. So my parents saw that. And when I arrived to Los Angeles, my parents were very clear, especially my dad. He said, your only job is to go to school. You don't have to worry about anything else. Even though, you know, we didn't have a place to stay. We were staying with family members. We were moving around a lot. And my parents didn't have the money to, you know, send me to school, but they somehow made it work. And in high school, I was determined to go to college. So I would take every class that I could think of, 0 period, 6 period, college level classes, AP classes. I was driving my counselor crazy, asking so many questions about what other class to take, what else to do to make me a better candidate for, you know, for college and universities in the US. I knew I wasn't documented. I always knew, but I had no idea what it meant, you know, what it will mean for my life, how my undocumented status will stop me from, or will not necessarily stop me, but make it very difficult for me to go to college. I think it was until probably 11th, 12th grade that I realized, okay, it's going to be very difficult and I'm probably not going to be able to do this. And I may have to go back to Oaxaca and go back by myself if my parents want to stay here, and, you know, go live with my grandma, go to college there. But I was very lucky that a year before I graduated high school, California passed AB 540. This, you know, our in-state tuition law that allows undocumented students who meet certain requirements to pay in-state tuition fees. So that's how I was able to go to college. But we didn't have scholarships. I didn't really know any other undocumented student that wanted to go to college. I thought I was on my own and trying to make this happen, that I was the only one who had this dream. And I, again, got very lucky that I met, my first semester, I met other undocumented young women who were also trying to get through community college and, you know, move on to a four-year university, who had all these dreams of becoming all these amazing things, teachers, attorneys, doctors. And they introduced me to this piece of legislation called the DREAM Act. And so because of the DREAM Act, because I thought this is the piece of legislation that's going to change my life and I need to fight for it, I can't just expect somebody else to change things for me, for myself, for my family. And I had 2 brothers who are also undocumented. So that's how I became an organizer. I started little by little organizing in my community, not really sharing my story at first, at least not publicly. And then eventually with a lot of sort of uncertainty and to some extent some fear, I began sharing my name, my story, became very public, and I continued to organize over the years, not just in California, but in other states, at the national level with amazing organizers that I met over the years. But I decided that at some point, it was enough of organizing for me, that I wanted to actually go to law school, that had been my dream my whole life, and that I owe it to myself and to my family to make that happen. And so I applied to law school, not knowing whether I could actually practice law, because California had not yet allowed undocumented people to become licensed attorneys in California. It was my first year in law school when that changed. So thanks to the work of so many individuals, I didn't have to do anything. You know, I benefited from the work and the sacrifice of so many that came before me. But I was willing and I was ready to fight to change that. So I went to law school with this idea of, it doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter how much I have to work. I'm going to get through law school and then I'm going to find a way to become an attorney and actually practice law. That was my idea. Thankfully, I didn't have to do anything extra other than sit for the bar and pass it, which I did in 2017. And so I now have my own practice. I practice immigration law for the most part. And I continue to share my story because I think it's important to do that, because I think it's important to not so much change. I'm not doing it with the intent of changing the minds of Republicans or people who hate immigrants. I'm doing it with the intent to let undocumented people, especially those who do not have DACA like me, know that there is a way to, to make all of your dreams a reality, that it's not going to be easy, that it's not going to be fun at times, that it's going to take you so many more years than you probably expected, but that you can do it. And so that's why I, participated in this documentary. And I know I'm going on and on, and I'm sorry about that. But it was an interesting process because it's different from what I had ever done. But I'm very grateful to Zach and the Optimist team that really were amazing in following through with what they had promised this movie would be, and respecting the boundaries that I had, because at the end of the day, I am a private individual, and there are things that I do want to share, but there are things that are very private and close to my heart, and that I have to also respect the privacy of my family.
Thank you for that. That was amazing. That was just great insight into everything in the documentary. You mentioned a bit at the end, just like, I guess the challenges of going through and sharing your story through a documentary setting. Were there times where you felt like this was the wrong setting, or you wish that you hadn't started doing a documentary? Or are you, now that you're on the other side of it, do you think a documentary was the proper way to share your story, so to speak?
I think this documentary was the proper way. I had been approached by other filmmakers in the past, but I didn't feel comfortable working with somebody else, because the way that other filmmakers approached me was very much like, just give us all the information, give us footage, give us pictures, relinquish control over your story, essentially. Not in those words, but that's how it felt to me. And I was not comfortable with that. I didn't want to just have somebody else tell my story the way that they wanted to tell it. With Optimist, it was a different approach, and I think they emailed me several times before I agreed to meet with them, and we had a lot of conversations. I made it very clear that I wanted to be consulted on things, that I wanted to be kept up to date on the progress, and also made it clear when I wasn't comfortable with sharing certain things or opening certain spaces that were, private for me and for my family. And they were very respectful of that. And they really followed through on the things that they had promised, the things that we had talked about. I don't think I would have been able to do all the things that we've been able to do with this documentary, and set up the legal fund to raise money to, help provide legal services to people who cannot afford it. That's an idea that I had for a long time, but it's a lot of work. And the Optimist team really came through and helped me make that a reality.
That's amazing. Thank you. One question, I guess, moving towards the film itself. And so Edith is one of the other characters in the film who's kind of focused on. Could you explain a bit about what was Edith's situation? Not just hers, but maybe others that are in a similar situation, and what might have happened since then? Because I think we ended off in kind of a cliffhanger, so to speak, at the end of the film.
Yeah, there's a lot that has happened since when we finished filming. Edith is a woman from Michoacan, Mexico. She came seeking asylum. She was fleeing violence against her and her family, her children especially. And unfortunately, she was faced with a very challenging immigration system. And one of the, I think there's maybe 3 or 4 now, judges in Cleveland, Ohio. The judge that oversaw her case is now retired, but he was very famous for essentially denying almost every case that went before him. And I believe that she was not given the right, the right process. She was not given the right chance or a fair chance of presenting her asylum claim. And ultimately it was denied. A lot of information, in my opinion, was minimized. A lot of the trauma and a lot of the violence that she faced was minimized by the judge and was just not even taken into account. So she appealed the decision. She went to the Sixth Circuit. Unfortunately, the law is not on our side, as we have seen in the last few years with the Trump administration. They've been gutting asylum law, but that started way before the Trump administration, in my opinion. So Edith was faced with this cruel immigration system, and there was no longer any other appeals that she could do. So she was order removed, and I was asked to take her case to do one thing only, which was a stay of removal, because she was about to be removed. And I thought it was going to be something easy. She was my second client. I had just become an attorney, had just gotten sworn in as an attorney. So I had no intention of taking such a monumental case. But as soon as I started working with her, I realized there's a lot more that we can do, but there's also a lot of organizing that we can do around this case, because it's not going to be your typical case of just going through the typical legal process. The typical legal process has not worked, but we can't give up. And so she was willing to fight, which is very important when you're working with clients. If they are willing to fight and they're willing to be public, then you can work on other tactics. And so we started organizing locally, and then connecting with other asylum seekers, mostly women who had also sought refuge in churches all over the country. And Edith is now in her 3rd year of being in sanctuary, and she has faced retaliation by the Trump administration. She's one of a handful, about 8-9 women who have received exorbitant fines. So something that the documentary doesn't show, because it happened after, was that in last year she received a fine of $500,000, almost $500,000. And so we were able to fight back against that fine, and ultimately the government withdrew the fine. But then earlier this year, they came back with a $50,000 fine. So that $50,000 fine is still pending. We're still waiting to see what the government will say, whether they will actually go ahead and impose that. They have threatened with criminal prosecution, which, it causes fear in Edith and the other women who are also facing this situation, because they are in a church. For the most part, the churches have been, with some exceptions, have been treated as sensitive locations where ICE has not, raided those churches. But we don't know what's going to happen. If Trump wins next week, I don't want to even think about what would happen with those churches.
Thank you for sharing. And again, thank you so much for going into depth about something that was very personal for not just Edith, but for you as well going through it. Because having this case as a second client must have been really tough on your end.
It was. It was eye-opening. I think I've learned so much, and I've grown so much faster as an attorney than I had expected. So yeah, it's been interesting.
I wanted to ask one more question about the film itself, and then we wanted to broaden it to everyone else as well. And so you mentioned a bit about the tactics, both now and also in the film as well, like how you went about approaching for advocacy, for immigration reform. And in your opinion, do you believe like change happens kind of from the grassroots scale, or does this happen from the top down? And where do you feel like you play a role in changing the law or changing the landscape?
Yeah. No, I believe, I've always believed that the actual change happens when you start from the bottom. You have to change, not just change attitudes, but actually empower people to fight for what they believe in. I've been an organizer for about 15 years now. It's hard for me to say that I've been an organizer for 15 years, but for many years I had follow what other people told me to do. There were organizations, they were nonprofits, there were so-called leaders of the immigrant rights movement that would essentially telling young people what to do, how to talk about immigration, how to talk about the DREAM Act, how to talk about our stories, what kind of information to share or not share, what kind of picture to paint about the immigrant community. And that to me was not empowering. It was, sure, they had the power to mobilize people, but they were not actually doing the work that was needed in our community, which was to actually empower people, teach people how to organize themselves, their own families, how to make certain decisions, how to go about solving problems in their own community and not depending on someone else to come and save them. And so I believe that our role as those who actually believe in organizing, in our organizers, is to teach people how to do that. We should be working ourselves out of a job. We shouldn't always be there, because having people depend on us is exhausting for us, as organizers, but also for people. That's not the solution. We need to teach people how to actually solve problems, whether it's a small thing, which in the grand scheme of things may seem like a small issue, but for those individuals, it may be something that's so pressing and it's a big issue in that specific moment. So I think my role, maybe less so now than it was before, is to actually teach people how to fight, how to feel that they have enough agency and enough power to say, this is what I want, right? And so I do it in a less direct way now, because I don't have the capacity to go out there and organize with my community every single day. But I've done that. I hope that I've done that with my client Edith, and I try to do that with other clients, because it's a team effort at the end of the day. At least in this particular case with Edith, I can't. I'm not a saver. I can't just come and save the day. I'm working towards building something that can eventually get Edith out of that church once and for all. And she's doing the same thing.
Thank you. I think through the documentary, your dual role as an advocate, but also a community organizer, really shown. So thank you for that. And so this next question, I want to just open up to Alejandro and Katiuska. And first, I actually wanted to ask kind of a general question, just to give both of you a chance to kind of introduce yourself and share a bit about your story. Is what motivates you to pursue, whether a JD or a legal career? And what do you believe, your role is in the law as a whole? And so I guess we'll start off with Katiuska, if that's okay.
This is so inspiring. Lizbeth, oh my gosh, you're so inspiring. Thank you for having me. I realized we both I migrated when I was 15 and you came when you were 14. And yeah, it was definitely a journey to learn English. And, I happened to come to the United States by myself without my parents, which was created this whole new barrier of access. But for me, why I want to go to law school, or why I decided, I think it had to do with my experience at the public defender office. And then there's one specific case that I had to work on, where an undocumented driver was stopped for driving too slow in the rain. And he happened to have a suspended license, and then he ended up getting arrested. And it was like this whole thing, right? And a lot of the attorneys at the public defender office, they were all really progressive, wanting to help immigrants, but they didn't really understand the intersection of being undocumented and having, you know, like to be arrested, you could be facing deportation. So for me, as an undocumented person myself, I felt like, you know, I could feel like his pain and like the fear that he had. And the office also didn't have a lot of people that were bilingual. So I thought like me being able to talk to him and like writing his, you know, his statement and actually like being able to understand, like he kind of felt like safe with me. And I felt like that was like such a like important moment in my life where I felt like the law was, you know, it is a tool to oppress people, but it can also be a tool to fight for justice. And that specific public defender was able to fight for this client, and they got the charges dismissed. And they argue that the stop was unlawful and all of these things. But I felt like the attorney really, you know, had those tools to be able to articulate to the judge. And I just remember sitting in court and feeling like, wow, like it's so amazing to see that someone is using, you know, the law to actually fight for people. And like criminal, you know, being a criminal and public defender. And so for me, I think like law school is really a tool to like be able to fight for my community, and to also, you know, bring in this struggles and like stories to like the movement and the classroom. Because as an organizer, it is completely different. Like law school, it's been like the most, I guess, like alienating experience I had, because I'm used to like being around community, and in law school, it's like, it can be so dry, but I also feel like I have that opportunity of like, you know, teaching my own community their rights and being able to represent them, hopefully in the future, and being able to fight for them. And also, you know, utilize my own story to say, you know what, like the systems were not meant for people like me to be attorneys, especially, you know, being undocumented, first generation. But I also feel like I am challenging those systems through my own existence and pushing them towards like, you know, earning those tools for justice. So I think that that's why I'm like pursuing to become an attorney.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Alejandro?
Yes. Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks, Lizbeth and Optimus, for putting that film together. I think those are stories that need to be told and really humanize the experiences of people across the state. Excuse me. Yeah, for me, I mean, I came to the U.S. when I was younger. I was maybe 7, so a little bit of a different experience from our other panelists. But similar to what Lizbeth mentioned, since I was a kid, I've always had this idea that I wanted to become an attorney, but it was more of like a romanticized version of it, where there was like, oh my God, you get to do so many things, you help so many people, and then you make some money along the way, right? So that was something that like motivated me at first, but just like I always also knew that I was undocumented and there was a lot of barriers in the way, but that'll never like stop us, right, from getting to where we want to go. So going to college was definitely a struggle, and then just seeing that, you know, all these opportunities were not made available to me because of my status, kind of motivated me more to do that, more to take more of this career trajectory. But then what really excuse me, has pushed me over the top to really pursue this this career at the end of the day, my mother was detained in early 2017. And although I'm very fortunate that she's out now, she was only in there for a short period of time, but it seemed like a lifetime, the time that she was detained. I didn't really see an end in sight, and I didn't really know how we were gonna be able to get her out, right? So because of the attorneys that were representing her and their extensive experience, she was able to get out. But then that just ultimately like further lit that fire in me to keep pushing for not just my dream and my personal goals, but to just keep giving back to the community in whatever way I could. I working in the workers' rights program, has really shown me how much of an impact just one case can have on not just a person, but like a family, right? Like, so there's some times where we help a worker recover a few $1,000s in wage theft. And just that in itself helps a family of, working class family of maybe 2 or 3, 4 kids, just puts them back on their feet. And so just seeing the impact that type of work does has really also motivated me to pursue a career in law. But first of all, to go to law school now. It is a difficult road. I also don't have DACA. So I'm trying to think about all these other barriers that will come when I eventually submit my applications and make decisions. But nevertheless, that's not stopping me to keep pushing for what I want to go. So just, I guess, to wrap up my answer, this like need within me to just keep giving back as much as I can. But also within all of that, sorry for kind of going on a tangent, but there's only, I have this idea that there's only so much that you can do as an attorney, and you have to change the laws to really make the change that you want to see on a bigger society level. So besides becoming an attorney, I also want to push for legislation to improve the conditions of our community so that we're not tied in this draconian system that we have now.
Thank you so much for your powerful answer. And all your answers have been so powerful, and this has been a really powerful conversation. I guess a question for everyone is, a lot of us go to law school with our families in mind, our community, our passions. And it's obviously clear, like, law school and the idea of law has been, a very powerful tool in our lives. And it impacts us very tangibly. But law school is also really expensive. And for a lot of folks coming from a first generation background, they may not have a lot of, generational capital or social wealth behind them in their family. So this question is, how much has a career in law as a way to earn a living played a role in your decision in whether pursuing law or, in your case, Lizbeth, staying in law?
Okay, should I go first? Okay. Sorry. So the question is, I think I didn't really understand the question. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, I can clarify. That's totally fine. So the question is just how much has your decision in pursuing law, how much has that, like, decision making also considered, like, the idea that you need to make a living and earn a living, and so the law itself is like a career to make build social capital, build generational wealth.
Right. Yeah. Before I went to law school, and even when I was in law school, I thought, okay, I definitely want to make a living, but I'm not doing this for the money, right? But as a business owner, I've had to be faced with the realization and the reality that I have to make money if I want to keep the doors open. I certainly did not start this journey with the idea of I want to become a millionaire. If that happens, great. But what I really want to do, I think, is provide the best services that I can to my clients, because in a very selfish way too, if I can become a good attorney, then if anything happens to my family, my parents or somebody else in my family, then I can step in and actually do something. So I need to do the best I can for my other clients to have the tools and the knowledge and everything necessary to be able to defend my own family and defend myself as well. So that's one motivation. But certainly I want to, be able to provide for my family. My parents don't have a retirement plan because, they've been low-wage workers their whole lives. They have not been given the chance to save for retirement. And of course, they are paying taxes and they're contributing to Social Security and all of that, but they're most likely never going to see that money. And so someone is going to have to help take care of them. And so I feel like I am that person. I do have 2 other siblings, but we want to, also have a life that is comfortable for ourselves, for my nephews, for my parents. So yeah, staying in the law is, I think that is one motivation. But I think the biggest motivation for me is making sure that I am prepared for when if I hope that never happens. If my parents are ever in the need of having an attorney defend it, like in the case of Alejandro, I mean, I can't even imagine what that feels like to, see your parent detained. I don't know what I would do. I feel like I will, I don't know. I mean, I'm an attorney. I know what I need to do. I know what the steps are, but being faced with that reality is very different.
I can go next. I think for me, like money was and it still is like a big concern. I think it's big. I don't have DACA, and I think that for a lot of undocumented folks, I mean, this is the only time in my whole life that I'm not working right now. And the only reason why, because I was able to get the Chancellor Scholarship. And then this year I was able to cover it with the scholarships. But otherwise I will be working. I work as a waiter. I worked as a paralegal before here. And I was doing independent contracting and like just translating anything that you can think of just to save money for law school. And so, I think scholarships are a really great way for you to like get money and be able to afford law school. And then the other thing that I've been doing more, it's like pushing my own mentors to be advocates for me, because we do have, mentors that are there to support us, but also we need to ask them to really, in the spaces that they're attending, to push scholarships and funding towards giving it to undocumented students, because there's a lot of like people, especially in the Bay Area, that have a lot of money, and they really have like funds that they can just give to students, and sometimes they really like they're just wasting the money on things that are not meaningful, while they can be given into a student that is really going to make a difference. So I will push, I contacted all of my mentors and I asked them to help me with like fundraising, and actually a couple of them were able to ask their churches to give me some money. I mean, it's a couple $100, but one of my mentors was able to get me like $7,000 from their church. And for people who have a lot of money, like that's nothing. But for me as like low income, $7,000 and even like $1,000 is a lot. Especially like coming from a family where we live like paycheck to paycheck. And as, like Lizbeth is saying, I also think I'm gonna be the one that is gonna be like financially responsible for my my parents. And they just recently moved to the United States. So they're facing also a lot of barriers like accessing jobs. And so even now I'm still trying to help them out financially. But I think that there's a way to do it. You just have to really challenge the system and be resourceful. And I think we already have that resiliency in us as undocumented people. Like we're really fighting the system. And if we can, like, honestly, I really believe we can do anything we want to, because we're so resilient and powerful that we're never gonna take a no for granted. And a lot of my friends who are undocumented, they're really challenging those systems, and we just have to keep challenging so we can help another undocumented student in the future and like, open those doors for other people.
Yeah, I think similar to what folks are saying, right? Like I have like this need in my head to eventually be able to support my my mom. Again, I come from a single parent household with like me and my brother, so we were always, kind of like what Katiuska mentioned, living paycheck to paycheck. So financial security is definitely something that I think about. I don't think it's the main reason why I'm pursuing a career in the legal field, but it's definitely a motivating factor. Because you just think about like students, and maybe within our community as well, right? Who have two parents, or who have established roots in the U.S. and kind of have like a backbone in a way. I also want to be able to provide that for future generations within my family, either whether I have kids or not. I also want to look out for like my younger cousins, right? And if I have nieces and nephews, nephews also provide that. So I do think that providing or establishing generational wealth, right, and being able to provide for my family is an important reason for my pursuit in this field, especially because I've personally have lived the struggles of living paycheck to paycheck, worrying about like, well, am I gonna have an allowance for this week's lunch, or just other struggles that I think a lot of people in our community have dealt with. But yeah, the main motivating factor for sure is to, one, set an example within my family, that, you know, there's no barrier big enough that can stop us. Helping our immediate community, and for sure, trying to establish some generational wealth along the way.
Great, thank you, folks. I'm going to jump in with some questions from the audience. I think it's not, what's the word? I guess there seems like there's a lot of folks in the audience who are also interested in pursuing a career in law. So I'm gonna, yeah, folks would mind, I'm trying to see, there's some that are similar, but I think generally, like what, you know, what advice would you all have for someone who is interested in pursuing a legal career or attending law school? And Yongbin, also if you want to jump in here too to respond, since you are yourself in law school right now, feel free. So yeah, whoever would like to go first, jump in. How about Katiuska?
I think that if you have any goal, even if it's not law school, you should always just pursue it with your whole heart. Like, you know, give your 100%, but also, you know, I think that a lot of times we, as undocumented people, feel like if we don't give 100%, we're not, like, we dehumanize ourselves because we constantly feel like we have to be, you know, the best, you know, or like, and I really feel like sometimes we set unrealistic expectations of ourselves, and we have to be able to just know that we are doing the best we can. And I know some people, especially with what's happening politically, it is affecting our mental health, and it is important to take care of yourself and know that you know, you being able to survive the system, it is a political statement. It is revolutionary in itself because we are really, you know, dehumanized every day of our lives, right? Like a lot of folks, undocumented folks, we can get healthcare we want. You know, we have all these barriers getting a job. There's a lot of things that really affect our mental health. So I think you know, follow your heart, you're gonna do great, and know that there's gonna be people that are gonna see you and they're gonna believe in you and support you 100%. And that there's, even though we see all this hate and, you know, all this racism and, you know, like, we need to be able to see how love transcends. And I think like right here, like I can feel the love, right? Like we're all in this together and you're not alone. But just know that you're doing your best, and we're all doing our best, and we can't be dehumanizing ourselves if we are not 100% always, right? It's okay, and we're gonna, you know, we're gonna survive and we're gonna strive.
So I can go next. So I think the one thing I can tell, there's a lot I can say, but the one thing I want to remind everyone who wants to pursue a career in the law or any career that you want to pursue, know that you deserve to do what you want to do. You know, you deserve to be in those places, in those institutions, whether it's law school, med school, whatever you want to end up doing in life. There will be days, there will be times where you're gonna feel like you don't belong because you may be the only person who is undocumented in the class, or the only person who has your lived experiences, and you don't you can't really connect with other people. You can't really relate to other students or other people in the industry. And therefore you shouldn't be there because there are no more people like you there. Just know that you belong there. Imposter syndrome is a very real thing. And I felt it through law school. I feel it now as an attorney. I've been practicing for a little over 2 years now. And I finally can call myself an attorney with a little more comfort. It was always kind of weird to say, oh, I'm an attorney, even though I have a license and I was already practicing it, representing people. So you're gonna feel that a lot of times, more times than you can imagine. Just know that you deserve to be there. If you're willing to put in the work, if you're willing to do what it takes to get to that place and to remain in that place and get through law school and become an attorney, you deserve all of it. And so don't ever listen to people who say that you shouldn't be there, that you're taking somebody else's space, or that little voice in your head, even if it's not someone else, even if it's just that little voice in your head telling you you don't belong here or you're not qualified enough. Don't listen to that. You are qualified. You deserve all of it if you are willing to put in the work.
Lizbeth, Yongbin?
Yeah, I actually wanted to jump on because mine's kind of a adding piece to Lizbeth's piece is just, at least for me, like I think it's easy. I think a lot of people look at my path and see the successes, but I often see just a lot of the failures and the things I've fallen. It's a really tough path. I think just not just law school, but I think graduate school as a whole. My one advice is just learning how to be kind to yourself. I think that little voice in my head, for me, it's always there. Like that anxiety, that imposter syndrome. Like I think for me, it's a myth that one day it's going to disappear. I think I can be as successful as I ever can be, and I'll still feel that way. So I think it's just the nature of like how I lived in America. But doesn't mean, that I don't deserve to be kind to myself. And it also doesn't mean that when I do slip up or when I do fail on something that, I can't forgive myself for, I can't move on. I think learning how to forgive myself has been a really hard task. I know that if I can't do that, then there's no way I can get through law school or have a career. Because I think, there's gonna be a lot of mistakes along the way. Some of them are gonna be really personal or really impactful. And I think, one skill that I'm trying to be mindful of is just, accepting my mistakes, accepting my flaws, and learning to say like, it's okay, I can do better. But it doesn't mean I have to be perfect.
Yeah, I think that puts it pretty well. Something that I was just thinking about, that you are gonna deal with a lot of failures. I shouldn't say you will. Hopefully you don't deal with too many failures, but there will be a time where you don't do exactly as you would have expected, right? Being kind to yourself, I think, is really important. One, because there's already so many things going against you that you have to be able to find time to take care of yourself and nurture your soul, right? And also your physical well-being, along with your mental health as well. But I think one advice that it's something that I'm still working on to this day is being able to reach out to your community, because there's so many people here that want to help, that are rooting for you, right? Even though you may not even know them, there's like, we're all rooting for everyone. That's like all the participants here, even though we don't see anyone right now, but there's a big community here to help each other out. But reaching out to people that again are there to support you, and then being nice to yourself too, because like I said, there's days where you just don't think like, well, why am I doing this? But then you have to be able to go back to the reasons why you are pushing for this career in the law, and also just taking time to be able to disconnect from constantly being on this grind, to just become a human, just enjoy life, and find like the happy moments in life as well, because those may come few and far in between, but you have to be able to cherish that so that you can kind of recover and then go at it full force again.
Actually, at the end of that, I wanted to ask a question. And this transitions perfectly. It's just, I think based off some of the questions from some of the panelists as well, like, I think it's clear we're living in a pretty anxious, anxiety-filled time, with a lot of things going on, not just in the past 4 years, but honestly in the entire history of the US. But but especially in the last 4 years. And so I guess the question to everyone is, how does healing look like for you? And what are some ways that you've been taking care of yourself or your community in these times?
I'll jump in really quick because it's something that like I just started up again. In the introduction, I mentioned bike riding. I moved out to Berkeley about 2 years ago, and so I used to love riding through SF like at any time of day, whether it be raining or cold or just super hot. So for me, just being on my bike and just listening to music and kind of just tuning everything out, not even having a specific destination in mind and just riding. Because like everything that when you get back home, everything that you have to deal with will still be there, right? So in a sense, I guess just working out is healing for me. And then my partner is super supportive in more ways than one. And so just talking to her and listening to her advice and just recommendations as far as like how to take care of myself. Like right now I'm standing up because my neck has been hurting because, you know, we're just at home and we're on our laptops all day. So I've been also incorporating that, right? Like just advice from my partner. So yeah, I think just the community around me also is how I'm healing in these moments.
So I think for me is learning to say no. I feel like for many years I felt like I had this huge responsibility to always do what was required, always do what was asked of me. I was working a lot on, you know, what directly impacted people who were in removal proceedings, people who were fighting deportations. I was working with a lot of undocumented young people from other states, not just California. And so for several years, I didn't really spend a lot of time with my family. Even though, you know, we lived in the same house. Sometimes I would go on for days without seeing my parents, without seeing my siblings. I remember feeling very sad because my brother, I remember him as a little kid, and then all of a sudden when I came back after traveling for a few months, you know, he had grown taller than me and he wasn't this little kid anymore. And that really had a toll in my relationship with him because I was not there for him when he needed me. And so I lived with that guilt for a long time, but I kept saying yes to all the requests of, you know, I need help with this or I need help with that, like from anyone. And I've learned to say no. I've learned to spend more time with my family, to really cherish the moments that I have with them, to actually sit down and have a meal with my parents, to have conversations with them that are just not like, oh, hi, how are you? And, you know, goodbye, but actually have deep conversations, listen to their stories, listen to them tell me how they were as kids growing up in Mexico, and, you know, talk about my grandparents and things like that. That's healing my soul, you know, giving myself the space to actually be present with the ones that I love the most, the people that are the reason why I do this every day, the people that are the reason why I wake up every day and I still go to my office and I still do the work that I do despite the assault against immigrants and against immigration attorneys as well. I mean, it's not easy being an immigration attorney. Not easy being an immigrant in this day and age. So that's what healing looks to me, just spending more time with the people I love and taking care of them and taking care of myself and sleeping. I sleep more now.
Yeah, I think I agree with what everybody's saying. I think one of the things I've been exploring more is letting go of things you can't control. And that has such a deep meaning to me, but sometimes I always feel like there's definitely things around me that I wish I could change, like what's happening politically and everything. And I know I can, and it's been really hard to, you know, I just finished midterms and law school is just so crazy. And as an organizer, I felt a lot of guilt not being able to go protesting. And before law school, I was like protesting. And then I was like, now I feel like, you know, I can't really do that because of all the homework I have. But, you know, knowing that you're doing the best you can. And sometimes, you know, you don't control how much homework your professor is going to assign you. So then I'm like, okay, well, I'm trying my best here. And, you know, self-care is a daily thing. So like one of the examples, like I do random things. So like today, I decided I wanted to go for a run right after my class because I was feeling super anxious. And I just did it. And I had another meeting and I was like, okay, whatever, like I might be like 2 minutes late, they're gonna understand, but I really needed that time. And I think that we just really need to be willing to do something for ourselves. And if it's running, I also do painting, you know, and being honest with yourself, like Lizbeth was saying, learning how to say no is so transformative. And I think that that comes with just being really honest with people. And now that I'm, you know, I'm a first year law student, and a lot of people really like need a lot of help and stuff. And I have to be able to tell them, you know, be honest with them and tell them what my capacity is. But also people are agents of themselves, right? Like we're not their savior. Like they can figure it out things by themselves sometimes. And I think like sometimes we feel like we're the only ones that can help them, and that puts a lot of pressure on us. But honestly, realistically, they can figure it out too. Like they have the tools, they're smart and capable. And you know, sometimes we think that we're the only person that can, but I realized no. So I think that that's also what's helping me keep my balance mentally.
Thank you all for your participation in this panel and sharing some incredibly inspiring and motivating words with the folks on you know, on the panel, or listening in today, I should say. We're unfortunately at time, and I know there was so many more questions that folks had. There's some, I did want to share some resources, the Immigrants Rising resources that address some of the questions that folks had. I added them into the chat function, but in terms of pre-law resources, Immigrants Rising has a resource called a pre-law fund, which provides financial support to immigrants who are planning to attend law school, and that will help folks cover the cost of their application fees. Applications for that will be opening up in early 2021. And we also similarly are hoping to, are planning on releasing a pre-law guide, which is a law school resource guide for undocumented students. And part of like how to apply to law school, also early in 2021. And then lastly, the last resource that I think was touched on in terms of like, you know, Lizbeth's got her own business. She's an attorney and she's a business owner. So we have resources on our website called undocuhustle.org, which is an online hub where folks can learn about how to generate income through independent contracting or business startups. So check out our website, immigrantsrising.org, for that. And then lastly, folks have the ability to watch the film, The Undocumented Lawyer. I also added the link in the chat function. Through that link, it's available until this Friday, October 30th. But yes, just to close out, really want to thank Lizbeth, Katiuska, Alejandro, and Yongbin also for your moderation. We really appreciate everything you shared with us tonight. And thank you everyone who took some time out this evening to join us and listen in. So thank you all, and have a great rest of your evening.